For more than 2 centuries, every telescope humanity had ever built agreed on one certainty. The Andromeda Galaxy was moving toward the Milky Way. The motion was incredibly slow, exactly as astronomers expected. Every new observation matched thousands of years of calculations. It had become one of the few things in the universe no scientist questioned. Then, without warning, it stopped. Not gradually, not because it changed direction. It simply stopped. Within minutes, observatories across Earth repeated the measurements. Lunar telescopes confirmed them. Deep space research stations reached the same impossible conclusion. Even civilizations living hundreds of light years away reported identical results. An entire galaxy had frozen in place. Governments ordered immediate verification. Quantum computers analyzed centuries of astronomical data. Artificial intelligences searched for equipment failures. Teams worked around the clock, hoping to discover a simple mistake before the news escaped into the public. No mistake existed. The calculations remained the same every single time. The impossible had become reality. To prevent panic, every report was classified under the highest security level ever created. Only a handful of scientists were allowed to examine the evidence. Among them was Dr. Lena Orris. Lena wasn't famous for making spectacular discoveries. She had built her reputation by noticing details everyone else ignored. Years earlier, she had predicted the collapse of a distant binary star system after spotting a tiny inconsistency hidden inside thousands of pages of observational data. Other astronomers dismissed her concerns. Months later, the stars collided exactly as she had predicted. Now she sat alone inside the Galactic Observatory, studying the newest images of Andromeda. Something felt wrong, not with the galaxy itself, with the darkness surrounding it. She magnified the empty space until individual stars blurred into faint streaks of light. At first, nothing appeared unusual. Then she adjusted the image contrast. Thin lines slowly emerged from the darkness, perfectly straight, perfectly parallel, stretching across distances so vast they should have been impossible. Lena immediately assumed the software had malfunctioned. She requested images from observatories belonging to 6 different civilizations. Minutes later, the files arrived. Every image contained the same strange lines, always identical, always motionless. Natural objects did not cast perfectly straight shadows across millions of light years. Someone, or something, was standing between galaxies. Before Lena could alert the Observatory Council, every deep space telescope in known space shut down at exactly the same moment. There were no explosions, no cyber attacks, no warning messages. Each system simply powered off as if an unseen hand had flipped a single switch across the galaxy. Backup observatories activated automatically. They failed too. Within seconds, civilization lost its eyes on the universe. Except for one. A forgotten orbital telescope launched nearly 200 years earlier remained online for one simple reason. It was too old to understand the command that had silenced every modern machine. And during the 9 seconds before it finally went dark, it captured one last image. When the final image reached mission control, the room fell silent. Not because the scientists were confused, because they understood exactly what they were looking at. The straight lines Lena had discovered weren't shadows. They were edges. The visible boundary of an object so unimaginably large that the entire Andromeda Galaxy appeared insignificant beside it. No planet, star cluster, or black hole could possess geometry that perfect. The structure stretched across millions of light years, its surface absorbing every trace of light without reflecting a single photon. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. Then Lena compared the photograph with one taken just 12 hours earlier. Her heart skipped. The object hadn't suddenly appeared. It had moved. The difference was almost invisible, but it was there. She recalculated the measurements 3 separate times, hoping she had made a mistake. She hadn't. The impossible structure wasn't approaching Andromeda, it was approaching the Milky Way. The realization spread through mission control faster than any alarm. Artificial intelligences were immediately assigned to model every possible outcome, but each simulation ended the same way. The object ignored every known law of motion. It wasn't following gravity. It wasn't accelerating. It simply moved with absolute precision, as though space itself had been instructed where to place it next. While the world's greatest minds focused on the approaching structure, Lena noticed something no one else had. The object wasn't blocking distant stars. Those stars no longer existed. Astronomers pulled observation records dating back nearly a century. One by one, they compared old images with the newest observations. Entire star clusters had vanished from the sky. There were no supernovas, no black hole signatures, and no debris fields. More than 12,000 stars had quietly disappeared over the last 80 years. Not destroyed, erased, as if they had never existed at all. A chill settled across the control room. Then every alarm inside the observatory activated at once. The signal wasn't coming from the approaching structure. It was coming from Earth's moon. Hidden beneath the sea of tranquility, a forgotten network of instruments buried during humanity's earliest lunar missions suddenly powered on after nearly 2 centuries of silence. Most people had forgotten the project had ever existed. Lena hadn't. The instruments were known as the echo arrays, experimental receivers designed to detect signals too weak for ordinary telescopes. For generations, they had listened to empty space, recording nothing but silence. Until now, every receiver locked onto the same repeating pattern. Not words, not numbers, a heartbeat. One pulse every 37 seconds. Lena overlaid the rhythm onto the movement of the colossal structure. The patterns matched perfectly. The object wasn't merely traveling through the universe. It was keeping time. Before anyone could understand what that meant, navigation systems across thousands of inhabited worlds began rewriting themselves. Stable hyperspace routes vanished. New pathways appeared where empty space had existed only moments before. Then, every navigation display in the galaxy flashed to life at exactly the same instant. A message had arrived, and it hadn't been sent by any civilization. The message appeared everywhere at once, on military command centers, civilian spacecraft, mining colonies drifting beyond the edge of known space. Even abandoned navigation terminals with no power source suddenly illuminated. Every screen displayed the same 11 words. Your map was never the real galaxy. Prepare to see what was hidden. Engineers disconnected communication networks. The message remained. Power stations were shut down. The words remained. Entire systems were isolated from every known form of communication. Still, the message refused to disappear. Then, just as mysteriously as it had arrived, every screen went dark. Only one thing remained: a single file. No sender, no origin, no encryption. Inside were nothing but coordinates. Lena entered them into the observatory simulation. The destination wasn't inside the Milky Way. It wasn't inside Andromeda. It wasn't even located between the 2 galaxies. The coordinates pointed beyond the edge of every known star chart, toward a region astronomers had always dismissed as empty. According to every accepted model of the universe, nothing should have existed there. Yet every simulation insisted the same thing. Something unimaginably massive occupied that impossible location. The Observatory Council immediately voted to destroy the file. No one could explain who had created it or why it had appeared. They feared it was a trap designed to lure humanity into the unknown. Lena disagreed. If someone wanted us dead, she argued, they wouldn't need to invite us anywhere. Her proposal was approved by a single vote. Instead of sending people, humanity launched the fastest unmanned probe ever constructed. Its mission wasn't exploration, it wasn't diplomacy. It was simply to observe. The launch was kept secret. No broadcasts, no celebrations. Only a handful of engineers watched as the silver probe vanished into hyperspace. According to its navigation computer, reaching the coordinates should have taken 8 months. It arrived 17 minutes later. The engines hadn't become faster. Space had become shorter. Every navigation system aboard the probe failed simultaneously as vast regions of the universe folded together like pages inside a book. Distances that should have separated galaxies simply disappeared. When the violent distortions finally settled, the probe activated its cameras. The first transmission reached Earth 42 seconds later. Mission Control stared in complete disbelief. The universe looked wrong. Galaxies that should have been separated by millions of light years stood side by side. Brilliant rivers of blue light stretched across the darkness, linking one galaxy to another in an endless web that disappeared beyond the limits of the cameras. For centuries, every civilization had believed galaxies drifted alone through empty space. They had been wrong. The galaxies were connected, anchored together by invisible currents hidden beneath ordinary reality. Then the probe detected movement. Something enormous drifted beneath one of the glowing rivers. At first, scientists assumed it was another celestial structure. Then it changed direction. It wasn't a structure, it was alive. One after another, more colossal beings emerged from the blue currents. They dwarfed entire solar systems, moving with silent purpose as though they had followed these hidden pathways since the birth of the universe itself. No engines, no weapons, no signs of technology. They weren't traveling, they were migrating, as Mission Control struggled to understand what they were witnessing. One of the ancient giants slowly turned. It wasn't following the current anymore. It was looking directly at the probe. No one inside Mission Control dared to breathe. The colossal being drifted toward the probe without accelerating. It didn't swim through space or fire engines like a spacecraft. Instead, the glowing current itself seemed to carry the ancient giant forward, as if the universe recognized it and willingly cleared its path. Engineers prepared for the inevitable. The probe would be destroyed. Its transmission would end. Humanity's greatest discovery would disappear into silence. But that wasn't what happened. The being passed only a few hundred kilometers from the tiny spacecraft without touching it. Then every instrument aboard the probe reported the same impossible reading. Not mass, not temperature, not energy, age. The result appeared on every monitor inside Mission Control, approximately 13 billion years, older than almost every galaxy humanity had ever observed. Before anyone could question the impossible measurement, the giant released a pulse. It wasn't light, it wasn't sound, it wasn't gravity, yet every navigation screen across the Milky Way awakened once again. This time there were no coordinates, only 5 words. The keepers are returning. The message disappeared almost instantly. Then the probe transmitted one final image. Far beyond the migrating giants, something impossible was beginning to shine. A perfect circle of silver light slowly expanded within the hidden current. At first, scientists believed it was another galaxy. Then they measured it. The opening stretched across hundreds of thousands of light years. It wasn't an object, it was a doorway. No explosion followed. No wave of destruction swept across the cosmos. Instead, a calm silver light flowed through every hidden current connecting the galaxies. The migrating giants immediately stopped moving. Thousands of them floated in complete silence, all facing the immense gateway. They weren't preparing for war. They were waiting. Across the Milky Way, billions of people watched through observatories and live transmissions. Every conflict, every political dispute, every military operation simply stopped. For the first time in recorded history, the entire galaxy witnessed the same moment together. Then the probe received one final transmission. It wasn't language. It wasn't mathematics. It was a memory. Suddenly, Lena was no longer looking at a monitor. She was experiencing another time. The universe was young. The first galaxies had only begun to form, and the glowing currents flowed openly across the newborn cosmos. Along them traveled the same colossal beings, patiently guiding unstable stars into lasting systems and preventing entire galaxies from collapsing before life ever had a chance to exist. They weren't conquerors. They weren't gods. They were caretakers. For billions of years, they quietly shaped the universe before vanishing without leaving behind monuments or empires. Then intelligent civilizations appeared. Young species discovered faster travel, powerful weapons, and endless ambition. The caretakers had seen this story before. Knowledge had outpaced wisdom, so they made one final decision. They concealed the hidden currents. They erased every true map of the universe, not to imprison younger civilizations, but to give them time to mature before inheriting the greater cosmos. As the vision faded, the silver gateway widened one final time. Something was beginning to emerge. It wasn't another keeper. It was far older, and every civilization in the galaxy instinctively understood the same terrifying truth. The keepers had been waiting for it. The silver gateway continued to widen until the darkness beyond it slowly gave way to light. From within emerged no fleet, no weapon, no empire. Instead, a single structure drifted into view. It resembled no spacecraft ever imagined by any civilization. There were no engines pushing it forward, no visible crew, and no signs of machinery. Its surface shimmered like living crystal, constantly reshaping itself as though it contained the memories of countless worlds. The migrating keepers lowered themselves before it, not in fear, in respect. Lena finally understood. The keepers had never ruled the universe. They had protected it until something greater returned. As the living archive crossed the threshold, every communication system across the galaxy activated simultaneously. Not just human technology. Every civilization received the same transmission in its own language. The voice carried no emotion, yet it felt older than time itself. You learned to measure the stars. You learned to cross the darkness. You learned to survive. A brief silence followed. Across countless worlds, entire civilizations waited for what came next. Then the voice asked a single question. Have you learned to cross the distance between one another? No one answered. Not because they couldn't, because every species already knew the truth. For thousands of years, they had competed for territory, resources, and power. They had celebrated scientific progress while mistrusting their neighbors. They had mastered technology far faster than understanding. The question had never been about intelligence. It had always been about wisdom. Inside Mission Control, Lena looked through the observatory window toward the stars she had spent her entire life studying. For the first time, they no longer looked isolated. Every galaxy was part of something far larger. Every civilization shared the same hidden current. Every journey led toward the same future. The living archive slowly turned and disappeared into the luminous pathways once more, leaving the gateway open behind it. No commands were given, no promises were made, no rewards were offered, only a choice. From that day forward, the maps of the universe would never be complete again. Beyond every new horizon waited another. Beyond every answer waited another mystery. And somewhere within the endless rivers connecting the galaxies, the first architects continued watching, not to decide humanity's future, but to see whether the youngest explorers in the universe would become conquerors or caretakers. Subscribe.